Hi to everyone who is here. My name is Jennifer. I'm one of your Cardinal Quarter peer advisors. And I just wanted to first of all, thank our panelists for being a part of this panel. This is for the identity themed fellowships. And so we'll be hearing a lot of great information on how they found their jobs, their experiences, what it was like being a part of a Cardinal Quarter. I myself did a Cardinal Quarter this past summer, and I was so inspired by it that I decided to be a peer advisor this year to help everyone and spread more awareness about all these wonderful opportunities. But with that, I will go ahead and have all of my panelists introduce themselves. If you guys can just tell us a little bit about yourself, the Cardinal Quarter you completed, and maybe a little bit about the work that you did during your Cardinal Quarter. And maybe we can start with Sarah.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Sarah. I would be a junior right now at Stanford, but I'm taking a gap year. So when I go back in the fall, I'll be a junior. My major is human biology with a concentration in medical anthropology, and I'm minoring in data science. So if you have any questions about that, can let me know as well. So for my Cardinal Quarter, I did the Spirituality Service and Social Change Fellowship. And for that, I was working at this company. It used to be called DREV, but while I was there, they changed their name to Equalize Health. And they're a nonprofit based in the San Francisco area. And their mission is to create medical technologies, products, and devices for under-resourced settings, and like specifically middle and lower income countries.
Thank you, Sarah. And Sarah and I actually did the Spirituality Service and Social Change Fellowship together this past summer, which was really fun.
Yes, it was a great time.
For sure. Maybe we could go to Olivia.
Yeah, sure. Hi, y'all. My name is Liv, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am a junior double majoring in comparative studies and race and ethnicity, and FGSS, which is feminist and gender studies, basically. And I did the Indigenous Communities Fellowship this summer, and specifically, I worked at the Marjorie Hunter Brown Indian Law Clinic at the University of Montana, which is basically a nonprofit law clinic that provides free legal advice to Indian country in Montana. And so it's primarily staffed by law students, but they let me come on and work as a student kind of helper, basically. And we did a lot of work. I spent the most of the summer doing research, but also contacting different elders from tribes and whatnot during COVID, which was a really kind of amazing process. So.
Thank you, Liv. Maybe next we can go to Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm also a junior, and I'm majoring urban studies with a concentration in comparative cities in comparative and historic perspective, I believe it is. And over the summer, I interned at APEN, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and this is with the Empowering Asian American Communities Fellowship. And yeah, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network is an environmental justice organization that focuses on Asian American communities, specifically in the East Bay, so Oakland, Richmond, Berkeley, that area. So yeah, there's a lot of Chinese and a lot of Lao and Vietnamese communities there. And I worked with the state organizing team, so I was mostly researching statewide ballot measures and policies.
Thank you, Kyle. And last but not least, Isa. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Hi, yeah, I'm Isa. I am a sophomore. I am on a flex quarter right now, and probably will be taking a gap quarter in the spring as well. I am tentatively going to study international relations with a minor in modern languages and/or creative writing. And I did the Advancing Gender Equity Fellowship in a think tank in Bogota, Colombia, called FEDesarrollo, on an investigation about the economic impact of gender-based violence in Colombia. And so I worked online from home, but It was, I basically helped, particularly with the literature review part of the research. And so just read a lot of papers about what research that has been done, like feministic, in the Journal of Feminist Economics, about the economic impact of gender-based violence. But I also got to work with the community leaders of several women's centers around rural Colombia that work with victims of gender-based violence, um, and helped develop a qualitative research tool for an investigation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to hear more from you guys. It sounds like we have a very diverse set of experiences. So yeah, hopefully this will be a great learning opportunity for everyone. So for my next question, I was just hoping to hear more about how you guys decided to partner with your specific organization. I know a question I get from students a lot is who want to do a self-designed fellowship like all of you did. Is how do you find from all these great organizations, how do you find just one that you want to work with and that's willing to work with you? So if you guys can just talk a little bit about what that experience and process looked like. And maybe we can start with Liv and do the same.
Yeah, so the way that I like found my internship is I kind of like made a position for myself basically. So my dad is actually a professor at the University of Montana Law School. And so I contacted a couple of his coworkers who specialize in federal Indian law because that's what I'm ultimately interested in doing, hopefully is my career. And I basically said, is there any work for me? Can I do research with you? And Monty Mills, who was the professor that I worked with, basically said, oh, I am the head of this clinic. And while we don't typically have like undergraduate students work here, we definitely are looking for extra help due to COVID. And so I basically told him all of the different things that I was interested in specifically regarding federal Indian law, and said that I wanted to learn more about just like generally how it works as someone who hadn't been exposed to that before. And he honestly was so helpful and like created this entire program for me and gave me a bunch of different projects to work on. But I definitely couldn't have like done it myself. So it was really nice to have someone to work with like one-on-one who was like fully devoting his attention to me in terms of like creating this program.
Should I go?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So I found my organization. I was doing a presentation for what is it? Forgot. It was the Asian. Why can't I remember it? The Asian American like presentation. Like I forgot what it was called, but like I had a presentation on environmental justice with one of my friends, and while researching for it, I actually discovered APEN, and I was like, whoa, this is kind of late into the process. So no, don't do this, kids. But I applied super late for my Cardinal Quarter because I found my organization like 2 weeks before the deadline, and I cold emailed them, and I like made sure to like email them like obnoxiously so that they would respond to my emails. So yeah, so what I like really liked about APEN was they're like focused on like grassroots organizing, the focus on like just being so community centered, and like yeah, they definitely did like back in the 90s they were like one of the first environmental justice organizations in like the Bay Area, and they helped allow fishermen with like translating signs that were only in English for some reason. So yeah, I I like cold emailed them, and they said, yeah, we have room, and so that's how I partnered with APEN.
Thank you. Oh, perfect, Isa.
Yeah. So for me, I knew I really wanted to do some type of work in Latin America. I really wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I mean, a year later, I still haven't decided my major, so I was just kind of like wanting to have something that was related to social work, and especially I was always drawn to topics related to gender. So I just kind of I like, especially in Colombia, looked up a lot of places that worked with topics related to gender, either smaller NGOs, and then I found this bigger research center, which is actually an economic research center. And I reached out to the CEO, and I don't think he's the CEO, but he's like the director. That's the word. And he responded, which was great. I reached out through LinkedIn. I sent a note um, saying that I really wanted to help out, do an internship there, and then he sent out my information to all of their researchers, and then there was a couple who reached out, and then this one about gender was super interesting, and so I was like, yeah, I would love to work with you, and yeah, that was pretty much it.
I found my organization because I am really interested in health. That's kind of my thing, but I was on the fence about if I wanted to go to med school or not. And so I knew that I wanted to explore medical technology and kind of like the biotech industry. And so I looked around for organizations kind of within that realm. And I also really wanted to be in San Francisco for the summer before, COVID was a thing. That's where I was planning on being. And also the CEO and like the founder of the company actually graduated from Stanford D School and has also like talked at Stanford and given some different, I'm not sure if she's like helped teach a class or like just been a guest speaker or something, but I know that she is still really connected with the Stanford D School. And so I had heard about her. And so I also pretty much like everyone else just cold emailed and asked if I wanted to, or if well, I said I wanted to intern with them, and if asked if they had any space. And also I think that cold emailing really works pretty well actually if you're doing a Cardinal Quarter, because a lot of people will want you to like work with them. If you like, they don't have to pay you, then you're just helping out. And if you're getting funding from a different source, then it's really no problem for them at all, and they really actually like want you. So I think it helps.
Totally. Thank you for that, Sarah. Moving on to maybe kind of more of the questions about your internship or experience working with your organization. Maybe could you talk about like one or two highlights from your summer, or something that you weren't expecting and really surprised you? And this time we can start with Kyle.
Yeah, so I did, as with probably all of y'all, I did mine like very, very remotely actually. So I was able to do my internship from my home in Cleveland. So what happened? So a lot of my projects were just looking through like news articles, looking through data. So I did not really need to be at the physical site, and nobody was at the office at the time, anyways. If I recall correctly. So yeah, one of my like the first and like probably my biggest project was just creating that state ballot guide, and so what I think I learned from it is like it's just how important it is to like the audience you're creating like a document for. So like this is a community organization that like it's trying to look at these ballot measures and see which ones would be beneficial for like the community members, which ones might need more explaining for community members, especially I think it was which one is it like the affirmative action proposition like that in some Asian American communities, usually Chinese American communities, honestly, there's a lot of opposition to affirmative action. So just being able to like, creating this document and like, creating like a concise way to explain that, why affirmative action is like actually still needed. That is something, I learned from doing this project.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Liv, go ahead. All you.
I was just gonna jump in. Yeah, I think the highlight of my like summer experience, definitely just that the professor I worked with really like allowed me to actually like do the work that the law students were doing, which was like a big surprise to me because I was like, I'm ill-equipped to do legal research. But he definitely like walked me through it in a super comprehensive way and then set me free, which was definitely super intimidating. But basically the way the clinic works is sometimes we do outreach to different tribes in Montana, and sometimes different tribes do outreach to us when they need help. And the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe, which is basically the land that I'm on right now in Missoula, that tribe reached out to us and said, we're trying to get Senate Bill 3019 passed, which is like a water compact that they wanted ratified, that they had agreed between the tribe and the state of Montana that would basically give them management rights over the National Bison Pack, as well as the water under their jurisdiction in their ancestral lands, which is something that they've been fighting for like decades. And so they asked us to write a letter of support. And so my professor that I worked with allowed me to do all of the research and then draft up this letter of support to send to the Senate. And it ended up getting passed, which was such like a historical victory and something really powerful. And I was like, it's so amazing that I was like able to be a part of that, albeit a small part, but it was still really amazing. And so I think that was like the best part of my summer and also what took up the most time too.
Thank you. Maybe Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I have a couple highlights. Also, Olivia, that's awesome. So I love hearing good things that come out of Cardinal Quarter. So my two highlights is, so for my specific fellowship, which again was the spirituality, service, and social change. One highlight was that we actually met every week with all of the fellows that were doing the fellowship, and we had weekly readings and discussions, which were like really motivational. And especially in a time with COVID where everything was just like super weird, it was really nice to have that group that we met every week with Rabbi Patricia, and she was also just gave it such great and sound and wise advice. So that was definitely a highlight of my week throughout the summer. And then another highlight was I actually, when I decided to take a gap year, I extended working with my organization through November, like through Thanksgiving. And I'm still in contact with them to do personal projects whenever they kind of want me to. And so it was really like a cool connection and a long-term one that came out of Cardinal Quarter. And so I think that that would be my two highlights. And I just wanted to like add in another note about the fellowship that I did. We had like one person who was working with like a religious organization, and then everyone else was not. So it was like for mostly like emphasis on the service and social change. So don't let that name like deter you if you're not sure if like your organization would fit under it or not. It really is like open to everyone.
Thank you for adding that, Sarah. Oh yeah, sorry. Isa, go ahead.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of moments that were highlights for me, but I think it was definitely the people that I got to work with. I think I formed really great relationships, and it was just such a cool team. And they were all really passionate about the work, even though they were like, I think they all like did the more, in my opinion, boring like research stuff. There was like just reading or like, I don't know, econometric kind of stuff, but they were all really passionate about the gender issues that they were talking about. And I think I was really surprised with all the things that they let me do and participate in, especially just being in community with it. We always worked with the same 10 leaders of the rural women's community groups of Colombia, and they all had a lot of difficult challenges that what the purpose of these meetings with them was to understand like the challenges they faced, and it kind of informed the direction that we wanted to take the research in. And it was just really, I was surprised that I was let to be in those meetings and ask them questions and interact with them. And then what I took from that, it helped. My input was also considered later on, and so it was really cool to be. I didn't think that as an intern I would be doing what I would think is the work of those that are like have more experience, which is like actually doing the researching and asking the questions and formulating the questions. And even though it was virtual, I got to meet with and interact with a lot of different communities, which is a really great opportunity, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you all for that. Kind of one question that I'm really hoping to ask, and one question that I find a lot of students asking as well is, do you feel prepared to do a Cardinal Quarter? I know like it's open to all grades, and so especially as a freshman who hasn't done an internship before or had that kind of experience, did you feel maybe like your classes or through the Haas Center, do you feel well prepared, and what's something like retrospectively that you wish you had known before going into your experience? Which I know is a big question, so feel free to take a second to think about it. And whoever's ready can just pop in.
I can start off just saying that I think I was terrified throughout the whole process, like applying and then trying to contact the internships and starting the first few weeks were really scary. But I think um, first off, the fact that you can like send those cold emails, and like I remember I put in the subject line like unpaid internship, and like that gets you far because I think it's good to say that. And I like me who I spent most of my freshman year just exploring a lot. Like I took classes in all sorts of directions, and so I didn't feel like I had any like hard skills that I was bringing. But I think um they really made me feel like they valued just the fact that I wanted to work with them, and anything I could offer them, and my input and things like that. And so I think the Cardinal Quarter, all the workshops and stuff, it just kind of reassured me that like they are receiving like free help, and they probably really enjoy having someone to mentor over. um, yeah, and I think it was really scary because I had never really done something professional like that, but it's nice to like even to know that there's a bunch of other people doing the Cardinal Quarter, like starting off this internship with like mostly like zero experience, and it's mostly just like for your own learning and to do something you're passionate about is really cool. Yeah.
I can go. I guess the only thing I wish I'd known going into like the Cardinal Quarter or like applying is I honestly just wish that I would have known sooner, because I could have used the Cardinal Quarter in like my summer after my freshman year. And I feel like a lot of people just don't really know about it like freshman year. So big props to you if you're a freshman and like seek out those opportunities, because sometimes it can take a little bit like exploring around campus to find those opportunities. But I guess I would encourage people to apply, and also to apply to multiple, because there are multiple Cardinal Quarter like experiences or fellowships that you think that your organization or what you want to do fits under, then I would apply, because I like the one that I ended up doing was the one that like I kind of was just like, oh, like maybe that'll work. But then as I like realized later on that that one actually like fit with what I was doing better. And then it also allowed me to still do a Cardinal Quarter, but then also someone else who better fit under like the other fellowship in the other category, then they could also do it. So I think that applying to multiple just increases your chances of being able to do it. And it's a really cool program. So just apply to whatever works for you or make something work.
I can go. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Issa and Sarah 100% on what they said. But I definitely think that I felt unprepared, but in actuality, I was prepared, which was an interesting experience because I had a lot of anxiety about it, just never having like worked in a professional setting in that way. Because I've always just like, worked at my job over the summer and like on campus and whatnot. But what I didn't realize is that like a lot of those skills are transferable, which was really nice to realize, just like interacting with, my bosses in high school and in college and whatnot, like gave me those skills to work in that professional environment. And then I think the other thing is that I definitely recommend like for the interview process with like the Cardinal Quarter program, I was so anxious about that because I'd never like interviewed for like a job before or anything like that in terms of like, as I keep saying, like a professional setting. And so I was like super nervous, and then they ended up being like so incredibly nice and casual, and I was like so taken aback by that. So it's like really low stress process in actuality. Like you still have to put a lot of work into it, but if you do the work preemptively, then it ends up just really paying off, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. I think when I was cold emailing, I was pretty scared because you're always afraid that they're not going to reply. But the key is if they don't reply within like 2 days, you can just email them again, and like if they don't email you back, it doesn't mean like you haven't like really bothered them. And if you get an email back and they're like, yeah, we would love to work with you, then that's great. That's the first step to making a Cardinal Quarter. And then as for like when I started out, I think I was a bit nervous, mostly because of COVID. Like a lot of the communication had been kind of like on and off. But once we actually got started, like at first I was like afraid that I would need to I would need more like hard skills, like data skills, like R, MATLAB, whatever that is. But as I like went through it, I realized that oftentimes the host organization that you're working with is like more than willing to like work with your skill set. Like they're willing to like come up with like things that you can do, because as it turns out, a lot of times they need a lot of stuff done, and sometimes like even just even if you think you don't have any hard skills, usually they'll find a way to like get you to like do meaningful work. So yeah, I wouldn't. In fact, oftentimes like the hard skills like you think would be useful, they don't really require those at all. Like, they don't really need someone. They don't necessarily need someone who can do like R or whatever.
Thank you guys. Yeah, that's all great advice. And I also wanted to add for our participants, if you have any questions, feel free to chat them or come off mute at any point. I'm sure all of our panelists will be happy to answer your questions. And I know, Sarah, you need to leave soon, so feel free to leave whenever you need to. But I guess another big question for you guys is, how has completing Cardinal Quarter either changed the way you think about yourself? Did it change any of your future plans at all? Maybe the way you view the world? I know it's a super broad question, but maybe just kind of, reflecting back on your summer and thinking, how has it changed you now? And again, whoever feels moved to speak can go first.
Yeah, I have to head out, so I might just jump in and do this really quickly. But I think for me personally, like I said in the beginning, I was kind of on the fence about going to med school or not. Like I knew I wanted to do something in the health field. But I used my Cardinal Quarter to have an opportunity that I wouldn't have been able to have necessarily otherwise, and kind of like explore a different part of that field in the biotech industry. And that definitely has changed my direction and like given me more of an idea of what I want to be doing, and just like directed the rest of my studies. And so I think that it's just like really valuable to do a Cardinal Quarter that gives you really cool opportunities at companies or organizations or nonprofits that otherwise you might not really have the means, or like they might not have the resources to allow you to intern there. And so I think that just kind of finding something that you want to explore a little bit more that you might not otherwise is a really good use of a Cardinal Quarter. So, and that is in answer to your question, yes, like that experience for me is like changed my studies and everything else. So you can email me if you have any other questions, but thank you, Jennifer, for putting this on.
Thank you, Sarah, for coming.
Bye, guys.
Bye. I can just echo kind of what Sarah said. I really was using this as an experience to kind of decide whether or not I wanted to go to law school. And so it was like super helpful to work with a law professor and be able to like see what he does up close. And also he works with law students every single day. And so to kind of pick his brain about that experience and do some of the work that, law students do on a daily basis. So that definitely helped me solidify, like, yes, I do want to be a lawyer. And like, yes, I probably want to work in this specific field, though obviously that's still, up in the air. And then I think on like a more personal level, I really do feel like it taught me a lot of cultural humility, because I'm Native Hawaiian, I'm not Native American. And I think that there is sometimes like a presumption that like your cultural context for some reason is like enough for you to know things about like another context. And like being a part of the Native community, we all are like really tight knit, but having to make myself a little bit uncomfortable in certain situations when talking to tribal elders who have like different customs than my people do, and having to take a step back and like learn when to be quiet and listen to other people first, was something that I think is invaluable, especially if I want to continue to work with different Indigenous communities in the future. So super great experience for that too.
Yeah, I can go as well. Just what Liv was saying, I think cultural humility is definitely something I learned. Again, working with the leaders of the rural women's community centers, who had just decades of experience helping out victims of gender-based violence. Really, really tiring jobs, and a lot of them were victims themselves. And yet they had the like no amount of research papers like read would give the insight that they had, based on their work, in terms of guiding research, which ultimately is meant to guide policy. And it's really cool because I know that the research was going to be used for not only like government policy in terms of reducing the impacts of gender-based violence and gender-based violence in general, but also the practices of the community centers themselves. And so it was just, yeah, really amazing learning from them. And a lot of the communities had different practices and cultures, and it was so great to have a chance to listen to them and see how a lot of impact can be done through a lot of ways. And on a more personal side, I think the experience definitely just gave me a lot of confidence and feeling like, oh, like I can go out into the professional world. Like, and also, I think I had never really considered what having a PhD or more of a research background could do for you. I had never really seen myself in academia, but at this research center that was working so closely to these issues that I'm really passionate about, I really saw myself working there in the future. Um, and so, yeah, that was really empowering and also really fun because it just opened up a lot of possibilities that I hadn't even known could be possible paths for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just like to echo um, living. It is a said about yeah, just humility because like, I am Chinese, so I am Asian American, but the Asian American community in Oakland and Richmond is very, very different from the background that I'm from. So just learning to like center like community needs, organizational, like the organization centering community needs, and I like learned that. And also, yeah, I also kind of helpful for like learning about like what it's like to work in the nonprofit sector, I guess. Um, learning how to learning, gaining like invaluable like research skills into even just like reading like news articles like that. It's very useful to like be able to compile all of this information and just and give it out in a very concise way. So yeah, the experience like gave me a lot of confidence, and also it's kind of helping me determine what I want to do after college. Although I'm still not 100% sure. We'll see though. But yeah, it's a good experience.
Yeah, just to highlight what everyone's been saying, and a common theme that I hear a lot of Cardinal Quarter participants say is just like personally and professionally, I the word life-changing is pretty dramatic, but it does feel very life-changing for a lot of our students who participate in a Cardinal Quarter. It gives you invaluable experience both in the workforce, in the social sector, in the nonprofit worlds, but also for yourself, and really widens your perspective in whatever work that you're doing. Well, thank you guys so much. And I think one last question for you guys, if none of our participants have any questions that they would like to ask, is what's one piece of advice that you'd give to our students that are, maybe on the fence about doing a Cardinal Quarter, or don't know where to start, or are scared by the application process or the prospect of doing a 9-week-long internship? What's one thing that you'd like to tell them?
I think something that would have been really helpful to me in retrospect is kind of going into it with more of an idea of what I wanted to do specifically, because I didn't realize how much freedom that I would have. So a lot of it was my advisor being like, what do you want to do this week? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I wish I had a better idea of what I wanted to do. And so I think just kind of maybe if I had done like a little bit more research into the mission of the clinic, that would have been helpful, because I thought it was going to be super directed, and it ended up being a lot more open-ended than I anticipated. So I think that just going into it with an open mind, but also with a kind of secure plan of your goals, is definitely helpful.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, I think in general, having an open mind, and this was like, for me, if I had to tell myself, was just to be like, just trust that it was gonna work out, because at every point I was like, no. And so, because I felt unprepared, but I think both in terms of searching internships, I'm glad I had an open mind, because I never even considered the place that I ended up working with, and I absolutely loved it. And I just kind of found it like randomly. And I think it's good to reach out to a lot of different places, and find out more and see what you want. Obviously, if you know you really want to try something, go after it. But I personally was pretty unsure, even going in. I'm not sure if I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But I think it's really good to just have an open mind and be really willing to try new things, because you'll either really like it, or it'll tell you what you don't like, and that'll inform you about what you do. So yeah, an open mind, I think, is great.
I would like to echo, keep an open mind. Also, try to start early on your application, because like it gets super stressful if you don't do that. Like, I would recommend doing research like before, so that like finding your organization like earlier, so that you can email them earlier, so that you can start the application earlier. But also, yeah, keep an open mind. Also, yeah, I would like to echo what they've said about like kind of coming in with like a plan. I think for me, yeah, my my like experience ended up being a bit, I guess in retrospect, I like didn't work as much as like I expected to, and like sometimes that can be a good thing, but like oftentimes like just going in with like, I guess, more of an idea of what you want to do, and always, yeah, your like supervisor from like your host organization like should always try to like keep in touch with them, so that they know if you have too much work or too little work, so that you can like kind of balance it out. Just having good communication is also pretty key for having a good Cardinal Quarter experience.
Awesome. Thank you all. Yeah, that's all incredible advice, and advice that I wish I had taken into my own Cardinal Quarter experience. So hopefully the students listening to this and that are here right now are able to keep that in mind as they go through the application process. Just some final announcements for everyone. I just wanted to remind everyone that this deadline for the spring fellowships is February 1st, and for the summer opportunities, it's March 15th. So as those deadlines are rapidly approaching, like we were saying, time just seems to be flying by faster than we can keep a handle on it. But yeah, feel free to reach out to anyone all your peer advisors. Our panelists have been incredible, and I'm sure are willing to talk more. And so I just wanted to thank everyone for their time to be here with us on a Monday night. And yeah, thank you so much, and good luck with everyone applying right now.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.